The second part of the anime begins by showing a mysterious man looking at the poster of Akame, which is plastered on one of the bulletin boards in the capital. Two royal police officers approached him and asked him about his identity because he looked suspicious. However, the mysterious man just slaughtered the two policemen while speaking lightly about the massacre he would carry out in the capital. Not only the royal police, the mysterious man even massacred the townspeople who accidentally passed him. The next day, Najenda met a soldier from the Revolutionary Army who appeared to be dying. The man gave a list of the names of people who were quite influential in the capital and who were not part of the Prime Minister's accomplice. After that, Najenda returned to the base and ordered Night Raid to kill a butcher who roamed the city and slaughtered many people indiscriminately. Mine thinks that the butcher must be Zonk, who used to work for the Imperial Army as one of the executioners tasked with executing prisoners. Because so many people had been executed by him, Zonk was so mad that he couldn't stop his craze for beheading other people. After the Prime Minister formed a special team to execute those who opposed him, the Imperial Army no longer needed Zonk, so he was now roaming freely and began to carry out reckless massacres. Not only that, but he had also stolen one of the Imperial arms, so it would be quite difficult to deal with him. The Imperial arms was created on the instruction of the first emperor, who feared that the empire he had founded would eventually fall. To prevent this, he gathered many materials and hired scientists worldwide to make strong weapons and defenses. The creation of the Imperial arms is the result of their efforts. There were 48 Imperial arms in all, but almost half of them were lost during a civil war about 5 centuries ago. Several Imperial arms have been seen to be destroyed. Many Imperial arms were created from the remains of danger beasts that had unique powers, imbuing them with special abilities. Many weapons and armor-type Imperial arms were forged from a rare metal called orichalcum. The Imperial arms are not limited to one ability. Some are known to have secret powers that are yet to be discovered, and some have powers that are lost to history. Since each member of Night Raid is known to have the Imperial arms to help them in the fight, Tatsumi asks if he will get the Imperial arms. However, Najenda couldn't be sure of that because the Imperial arms weren't easy weapons to get and were also used by anyone. That same night, Night Raid went on a mission to kill Zonk by dividing its members into several teams and splitting up to find his whereabouts. However, unbeknownst to them, Zonk has been watching them from a distance and is targeting Tatsumi because he doesn't have the Imperial arms. Tatsumi, who was paired with Akame on this mission, accidentally saw the figure of his late friend, Sayo, in a deserted alley, so he immediately chased her. However, when Tatsumi hugs Sayo, she suddenly transforms into Zonk, who reveals that he can read Tatsumi's mind with a support-type Imperial arm in her head. Tatsumi was involved in a fierce battle with Zonk, but he could easily overtake Tatsumi because he could predict all of Tatsumi's attacks with that weapon. At first, Tatsumi seemed overwhelmed as all of his attacks were known, and he could not counterattack. However, with his mental strength, he could finally injure Zonk, even if only by scratching his face. At the same time, Akame arrives and praises him for fighting Zonk quite well. Zonk, who finally met Akame, asked if she had always heard the screams of the people he had killed. Apparently, Zonk had lost his mind because he always heard the voices of the people he had killed in his head, which tormented him. The duel between the two most sadistic assassins was fierce enough, so he decided to use his Imperial arm to defeat her. Zonk then creates an illusion about a girl named Kurome, who becomes the person Akame loves the most. He thought Akame would be caught off guard by seeing Kurome's figure. However, she attacked Kurome's figure, who was none other than Zonk, and said that she loved Kurome, so she wanted to kill her immediately. After that, Akame decapitated Zonk with her Imperial arm, the Murasama sword, and ended his suffering. After completing the mission, Tatsumi then asked Akame about Kurome. However, she said nothing and promised to tell him about Kurome one day. Sometime later, Najenda asked Sheele to physically train Tatsumi by swimming while wearing a suit of armor. In the middle of practice, Sheele tells him she's an airhead, often losing her glasses or failing at any chores she tries to do due to clumsiness. He became curious about her past, so she told Tatsumi about her past. Growing up in the low districts of the capital, Sheile's clumsy nature caused many people throughout her life to often consider her useless, isolating her from nearly everyone. At one point in her past, Sheele had a friend who didn't mind her personality. One day, she was attacked by her ex-boyfriend. Sheele killed the ex-boyfriend to protect her, revealing her strange talent for killing. However, in the end, this broke their friendship. Soon after, a gang related to her ex-boyfriend Sheele had killed earlier sought revenge against her and had already murdered her parents. Because of that, she coolly killed the group and was later scouted by the Revolutionary Army, who had learned of her ability. By joining, she wanted to use her talent in a way that would make her useful to others by helping fix society. Turning to the present, after completing his training with Sheele, Tatsumi is asked to meet Najenda, who apparently wants to give Zonk's Imperial arm to him. Tatsumi seemed happy to finally have one of the Imperial arms. However, he soon became exhausted while using the weapon. Najenda said that the weapon was not suitable for him to use. Since he can't use it, she plans to send the Imperial arm to the Revolutionary Army for further investigation. Besides eliminating enemies, Night Raid was also tasked with gathering the Imperial arms to strengthen the revolutionary forces against the Imperial army under the orders of the Prime Minister. Tatsumi then asked about the strongest of the Imperial arms. Najenda says that Imperial arms' actual power depends on the user's strength. However, if she can choose, she wants a weapon that can control ice. Shortly afterwards, Najenda tells about a charismatic man named Numa Seika, the leader of the northern tribes. Because Seika opposes the Prime Minister and his henchmen, they also send a woman named Esdeath to kill him and destroy the northern tribes. As a user of the Imperial arms, Esdeath can completely freeze anything in an instant and can summon and manipulate ice, even without a nearby water source. Not only that, but Esdeath was also rendered completely immune to harm from any temperature. She can easily defeat Seika and his troops, even make him her pet and command her army to destroy the northern tribes. Meanwhile, there was an uproar in the palace as two generals chose to defect and join the Revolutionary Army. Even so, the Prime Minister didn't seem to think too much about it because he was more concerned about Night Raid's actions that had killed his minions. Because of that, the Prime Minister ordered Esdeath to return to the capital as soon as possible. On the other hand, Leone took Tatsumi for a walk in the market, where she was quite famous among the merchants there. But then, a group of people came after Leone to collect the debt from her, so Tatsumi became separated from her. While looking for Leone, Tatsumi accidentally meets a girl named Seiryu, who is part of the Imperial Police. Seiryu has the Imperial arm in the form of a dog which she names Koro. Soon afterwards, Seiryu escorted Tatsumi to where he and Leone first came and then said goodbye to him. Seiryu was on a mission to capture the Night Raid members because they had killed her commander, Ogre, whom she had considered her mentor. Turned out, Seiryu didn't seem to know that Tatsumi had killed the ogre. Not long after, Tatsumi and Leone were seen in a district known as a nightlife center. They were assigned to kill a nightclub manager who often ordered female workers to take drugs and did not hesitate to kill those addicted to drugs. She really hates people who always exploit women for personal gain. Because of that, the female killer immediately took action to kill them all. After completing the mission, Tatsumi then wonders about the fate of female workers who are already addicted to drugs. Leone said she has an acquaintance, a doctor who often helps the poor, so she might ask the doctor to help them. The scene then switches and shows Sheele and Mine rushing to where they will carry out the mission. However, they are confronted by Seiryu, who suddenly attacks them after discovering that they are Night Raid members. Soon afterwards, Mine attacked Seiryu with her Imperial arm. However, Koro then changes his body size into a giant to protect Seiryu. Seiryu tells Koro to attack Sheele, but she can easily slash him. Even so, Koro does not die and can regenerate quickly. Seeing this, Mine told that Koro's real body must be hidden in it, and they must destroy it so that he can't regenerate again. Soon after that, Koro launched a barrage of attacks towards Sheele and Mine. Due to the urgency, Mine increased the strength of her weapon until she was finally able to repulse Koro, even if only for a moment. Sheele then took the opportunity to attack Seiryu, who immediately became overwhelmed when facing her Imperial arm. Seiryu, whose arms had been slashed by Sheele, ordered Koro to release his true power, where he then turned into a very terrible monster. Seeing that, Mine became desperate and was almost killed by him if only Sheele didn't come on time to save her. However, this was all planned by Seiryu because someone shot Sheele from behind, and Koro pounced on her body. When Mine was about to save Sheele, suddenly the Imperial police appeared, preparing to arrest them. In the end, Sheele was dying and distracted everyone's attention with a dazzling light that shot out from her weapon. Sheele did this so that Mine could escape from there and stay alive to warn the rest of the Night Raid members. After Mine managed to escape, Sheele finally breathed her last. The Night Raid members looked so shocked and devastated by Seilei's death. Tatsumi then asked Mine about the identity of the person who had killed Sheele, but Najenda warned them not to act rashly because it would only get them all killed. On the other hand, Esdeath finally arrived at the capital and immediately rushed to the palace to face the Emperor and the Prime Minister. He ordered Esdeath to eradicate Night Raid, which had killed many of his henchmen. He even promised to grant her request if she managed to destroy Night Raid. However, Esdeath did not ask for gifts because she wanted to fall in love. Hearing her request, which was quite unique, the Emperor also promised to find a husband who matched the criteria desired by her. After that, Esdeath ordered her strongest subordinates, tree beasts, to kill honest officials who defended the people's interest and slandered Night Raid for the murder. On the other hand, Najenda, who already knew that the slander was a trap to lure the Night Raid members out of hiding, then divided the Night Raid members into 2 teams to protect the People's Defense officials because their safety was far more important. At the same time, Leone will be in charge of spying on Esdeath. Tatsumi, paired with Bulette on this mission, seems impressed by his Imperial arm, demon armor and Curcio, which can make Bulette invisible. He tells Tatsumi about his past, where he used to be a soldier of the Empire. He later betrayed the Empire when his superior, General Liver, was framed for not giving in to the Prime Minister's agenda. Bulette became disgusted with the Empire that cared more for bribes than merit, regardless of how hard he worked. After leaving the Empire, he joined the Revolutionary Army and eventually its subsidiary, Night Raid. Meanwhile, Leone, who was spying on Esdeath, intended to attack her because she was alone. However, Leone finally chose to follow her intuition, which said it was all a trap. She finally rushed away from there. On the other hand, it turns out that Esdeath already knows that Leone is spying on her, so she purposely lets herself unaccompanied to trap Leone. Unfortunately, the plan failed because Leone chose to follow her instincts. Elsewhere, Tatsumi and Bulette, who is on a mission on a sailing ship, are surprised by the appearance of one of Esdeath's subordinates named Daidara, who then attacks Tatsumi with his Imperial arm. He was able to easily beat Tatsumi until finally Bulette arrived there and said that he was the one who would defeat Daidara. When Bulette activated his Imperial arm, suddenly, 2 other Esdeath's men appeared and immediately attacked him. However, he managed to repulse the 2 and then killed Daidara. The battle didn't stop there because one of Esdeath's men apparently was the General Liver that Bulette had previously told Tatsumi. In fact, Liver used to be a good general who fought and achieved much for his country and was upright, as he didn't give in to the bribes of the Prime Minister. However, after Esdeath offered him an opportunity to work under her, Liver became immensely loyal to her and followed her orders, no matter what, even if it cost him his life. After becoming one of her subordinates, Liver earns his Imperial arm, given to him by Esdeath. Bulette was also involved in a fierce battle against his former superior, while Tatsumi faced one of Esdeath's men named Niao, who fought without the Imperial arm, just like himself. Even so, Niao has a greater fighting ability than Tatsumi, so Tatsumi is finally defeated by him. On the other hand, Bulette and Liver both put their best in the fight until each of them was badly injured and could no longer use their Imperial arms. Seeing Bulette's ability to develop rapidly, Liver offered to join Bulette to become Esdeath's subordinate. But he refused the offer and proudly said he was a hero for the people's defense. Shortly after, Bulette and Liver engage in close combat that only relies on physical strength. However, the 2 of them used to be formidable warriors, so the duel was very fierce. Liver then injects poison into his body, making his blood contain poison, and then uses the blood sword technique to defeat Bulette. In the end, Bulette manages to defeat Liver and kill him, but in the process, he is poisoned fatally. However, the battle did not stop there because Bulette and Tatsumi still had to deal with Niao, who had the Imperial arm named Scream. Niao said that he would use the Triumph card of Scream to increase his muscle mass and strength by releasing a melody from the Imperial arm. Seeing this, Bulette then gave his demon armor and Curcio to Tatsumi and asked him to use it because Bulette had run out of strength to fight. At first, he refused Bulette's gift because he felt unworthy to use the weapon, but Bulette convinced him that he would be able to use Incurcio. At Bulette's request, Tatsumi uses Incurcio, and surprisingly, Incurcio can evolve and adapt to his power. Bulette, who saw this, became dumbfounded, realizing that Tatsumi had surpassed him using Incurcio. With the Imperial arm, Tatsumi's fighting ability increased dramatically, and he could easily defeat Niao. Seeing that, Bulette looked very proud of Tatsumi because he had managed to adjust to Incurcio and even surpassed his strength. He finally breathed his last with a smile etched on his face. Tatsumi seemed devastated by Bulette's death, which he considered his older brother. Tatsumi also promised to become stronger and use Incurcio to the best of his ability. Elsewhere, a girl named Kurome is seen sitting relaxed after massacring a village with her comrades. One of her comrades approached her and told her that she was asked to return to the capital immediately because they were planning to create an elite team to do important work. This is the end of the second part of this anime.